round of applause. She's going to help us do this demo. It's really great.
Sorry, he's bringing
No problem.
notebook.
We've got delivery
Yes.
for Jamie. Okay, now we're good. All right, so this is just a demonstration of just what you might expect in an accountability conversation. All right. So there's some kind of commitment or something that you have that you didn't follow through on or something. So just first of all, just tell us like what is it, so we got an idea.
Okay, so so we talked about, I guess, me taking some steps to having my own business and moving forward with the coaching, and I just I didn't do it.
Yeah, you haven't been following through on that,
haven't.
basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So there's probably a list of actions that you know you need to do, that you're committed to do, or that you have kind of promised yourself to do that you're not doing. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right. Great. All right. So we're already past that first little part of the awareness step. She's aware she's committed to something, and she's breaking that commitment. She broke that commitment. All right. So that's really clear. Okay, Jamie. So what had you not follow through? What's been stopping you from taking action on this stuff?
I just have a lot going on at work. You know, I work 4 10-hour days. There's just not enough time, and I want to get some of my art in there, so I didn't get it done.
Okay. So what does that cover up that actually had you not follow through?
If I take the actions, then I'm eventually going to have my own business, and it's kind of scary.
Okay. So she's covering up basically, I mean, you're basically saying fear, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the cover up was I'm busy. Who got that? Okay. The cover up is I'm busy. All right. And what that covers up is I'm afraid. Okay. Two very different worlds, right? And that's one of the tests I want to give when I'm checking for the difference between, you know, whether the thing that she shares when I'm eliciting the actual cause is really a cause versus just more of the same, versus more of the same cover-up. Is it really black and white? Is it really very different than the ilk of what she said before? If she said, well, I'm busy, and then what does that cover up? And then she says, I have a lot to do. It's kind of the same as I'm busy, right? It's just she's just saying the same story in different words, right? But we've got a very different story here. We've got I'm busy, which covers up I'm afraid. So, and is there something specifically that you're afraid of?
Yeah, if I
was
leave
curious.
my paycheck, how am I going to replace it?
Okay.
That's on me, and that's kind of big.
Okay. All right. And so what's the biggest thing that you're afraid of there?
That I'll fail and I won't be able to do it.
Okay.
And so I won't be able to take care of my son because I won't have the money.
Okay, fair enough. So you guys can get what's going on with this. Now, I mean, there's really not a lot more to do on the awareness piece, right? Like we could go and look what the fear covers up and all this other stuff, right? And drill down even deeper. Just because we got to the second layer so quickly, let's go down one more. Let's go down one more just for demo purposes. Because I mean, I would be happy with that in any coaching session, because now we know fears was stopping her, and she could transform that, or she could at least keep that on her radar screen, and she's not going to let that stop her, right? So, what does the fear that you just shared cover up? That's stopping you, would you say?
If I take those actions and get coaching clients, then they might figure out that I'm I don't know, not as smart as they are, and why should they pay me?
Okay. All right, so is that still fear? Like a fear of them not paying you? Because it's kind of back to the money thing, which sounds like it's a fear thing.
Yeah.
So that's more of the same now. You guys hear that? That actually is not another layer deeper. That's the same. It's just the same fear, 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 fear. So the question is not like what are the other things you're afraid of. The question is what does fear cover up?
Laziness.
Okay, great. Give her a round of applause for that. It's really great. You got that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see she's shaking her head. I mean, you can see that's a congruent response. She's not just making that up. So yeah, she's busy, but that covers up fear. The fear, that was the next thing for her to reveal, actually covers up laziness, right? Now, not to say that there's not a combination of those things, right? It's probably all three to some extent. But if all we started with in that conversation was, well, I'm really busy, it's like, well, we can transform that. Let's not be so busy, right? But if we just worked on that piece, which a lot of coaches would do, by the way, like a lot of coaches, they just work with her on time management. Like, okay, let's work on you like managing your time. That's not going to change anything for Jamie, because this is not about, it's not about time. Now, she is busy, right? And she's not like lying there. I mean, she really is actually busy. So that becomes a likely story. It's like, I'm busy, therefore. Like, the busyness causes me not to do this, as if she's not responsible for the time that she has left that she could actually put into this, right? But so there's something that you can be responsible. You're not, obviously you control your time, but you also have some commitments that you made that where it makes sense, at a minimum it makes sense, right, to put that time into that so you can take care of your child. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's a responsibility that you have. So you're actually being responsible about that. So to like take that and say, well, you need to change that, and yeah, we could work on that, but that's probably just a surface level of something that is really actually important to you. Is that fair to say? All right, great. So that would just get it caught up with the surface level story. That covers up fear. We work with transforming the fear, or a commitment to not let the fear stop her. That'll make a difference, probably, because it's something that's not right at the surface. But what's even below that is this laziness thing. Because when you're afraid, you don't have to, like anybody who's afraid is like, I can't do it because I'm so afraid. The last thing that you're going to accuse them of is being lazy. Look how hard they're working. They're putting all this energy into that fear, right? They really want this. They want it so much they're afraid of it. They're afraid of it at different levels too. She had 2 levels of fear that she shared, right? So that laziness is something that until you share it, you don't have to be responsible for it, number one.
Right.
And number two, you don't even have to be aware of it or admit it if you're busy being afraid. Right. Which is not that that's completely unauthentic or something, but for you, from what I understand, I mean, this is the first time we've really talked, especially face-to-face. Right. But from what I've read your forum, and from what I understand of you, from you, fear doesn't stop you from doing something you really are committed to. Is that fair to say?
That's true.
All right, you get that? That was a congruent response, right? So so fear is a factor, but it's really not what's actually stopping her dead in her tracks. Laziness is a much more likely story here. Now again, are you tired sometimes? Yeah. Is she busy? We know she's busy. She already said it, and I believe her, right? Is there fear there? Yes. Does that take energy? Does that sap her energy, make her more tired? Yes. Is laziness what's stopping her? Yes. 2 very different things. You can say, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm fearful, I've got all this stuff going on. When you live in that world and you put that out there in the barroom conversation and complaining to your friends about it, how many of them are going to say, well, you're just lazy, come on. I mean, if any friend said that, they're not going to be your friend anymore, right? So, I mean, I acknowledge you for getting to that next level, number one. And secondly, your honesty and your willingness to be rigorous with yourself about that, because like I said before, it's like without that, there's no possibility for transforming this. Right. There's no possibility for you taking action, but also for the courage that it takes to go way outside of who you really are. I mean, you're really not a lazy person. Is that fair to say?
Right.
And she's not a lazy person, but her laziness, because we all have laziness, right? It doesn't mean she's even have a tendency to be lazy, but in this case, with all the other stuff going on, that thing that we call laziness, or that you're using the word laziness for, is actually what's getting in your way here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, I lose a lot of time because I'm still getting used to the eating with the gastric bypass. So if
Yes.
I eat poorly, or I eat something wrong, or I'm stressed and I eat, then I lose a lot of time because I'm sick. So that's
Yes.
where the lazy, to me, I take that as lazy because I'm not getting anything done.
Because you could have done it, but
Yeah, I could have, I guess, drank a protein shake and then there wouldn't be any issue. I can digest that, no
Yes.
problem, and then I can just move on.
you see how the laziness thing has a multidimensional impact. Even after gastric bypass, it still has an impact, right? So really, and by the way, was that the first thing to come up? No. Was it the second thing to come up? No, it took 3. I mean, that was like a bonus round for us, and that was where all of the value was. And by the way, for a lot of people who laziness really impacts, whether they're hardworking or not, being hardworking doesn't stop you from, there's no way they can be lazy, right? That is not what this is about. In fact, when somebody has laziness that's stopping them, a lot of times they cover it up with a lot of hard work in other areas. So nobody ever sees that factor that she so bravely admitted to right here as well. And again, she might not be lazy in her job currently or with her son, is it? Yeah, with her son, but in these other areas she's lazy. So the laziness is just there, and it impacts those other areas as well. It's just that it doesn't impact it as much, and it's not as visible to her. So this is a much easier area to cover up for a lot of people, but it still can be actually what stops somebody, not just in one area, but in there's a multidimensional impact of that laziness in her life. Does anybody not see this? Okay. All right, so this is really clear so far. So we have just crushed the awareness step here. Really, really great. To be aware of what the cover-ups are, what the actual cause is, the commitment there, and we've already actually started on step 2 because you already shared and some of other impacts around laziness and how you would look at that, right? So let's continue with that track. So you already said one impact of just not following through, obviously, is that you're not getting results in that area. One impact of the laziness is what's happening in terms of the symptoms you're experiencing from the situation around gastric bypass. So we already can see some impacts that she shared around laziness and certain lack of follow-through and several different commitments, but we're just going to focus on this one for now. Let me ask you this. What is what I'm looking for in the impact is, again, we don't want to just go through every single thing for like an hour. I'm looking for where the biggest bang for the buck would be. Like where would the most valuable awareness of or impact of what particular causal factor? And I've got all these things I can choose from. So my thought is that it's not the laziness, because you know the impact of the laziness. You already volunteered it. We could talk more about that, but I think you got a really good start, a good head start on that piece. But what about the impact of covering that up? What would you say the impact is of covering up your laziness? And I don't mean like in the good way of working hard. I mean in the way when you cover it up so that you don't have to be responsible for it, or it's not, it's not something that you are allowing to come up and face and deal with. Something that you cover up or don't admit or don't talk about or don't focus on and don't face. What is the impact of that?
Well, I think my son understands me pretty well, so I think he sees that, and so he thinks that sends the message to him that laziness is okay.
Yes.
And I.
Because you don't even talk about it with him.
No, but then I want to call him on being lazy, but
yes.
I don't really have a right to do that if I'm doing
yes.
it. And then.
What's the impact of that just with, what's your son's name?
Anthony.
Okay, just with Anthony, what's the impact of what you, I got the situation that you shared. What is the biggest or what is the most intense impact of that, in your opinion? Of that situation that's created by the covering up of the laziness. Not laziness. Laziness is not an issue. It's covering up of it.
Right.
That's what's created all those issues. So what is the impact of those? Because you've painted the situation. I got the situation, but in the present, maybe if we looked at the future, there'd be a more intense view of that impact, and that might be one approach to take. But even if we didn't go there, what is the greatest impact of that situation, in your opinion? The most important impact to you?
Well, he sees me going back into the office and getting more like physically sick. So putting off doing the stuff I want to do and need to do from starting my own business is making me sick, and he sees that, and he sees me not doing what I say I'm going to do. Because he knows I want to have my own business. He knows I want to be able to travel with him and do stuff. And so me not doing it, just, I don't know, it kind of says to him too that I don't think it's very important.
You don't think that the
Like I'm
the
saying
thing that
to
you've been
him,
had as a goal is important.
yeah, and spending more time with him is that, I mean, it kind of says that that's not as important as I say it is.
Oh, because he misses out on time with you also as a result of that cover-up.
Well, yeah, but if I had my own business, I would have more time to spend with him too,
Sure.
versus working in a cubicle all day and trying to start a business. I'm like, then I'm never.
So how does he
available.
see you as a result of all that? I mean,
As-
without like what you're, because you're talking about this from your perspective as a responsible mother, right? Which I honor, you know. Let's go into him for a second. What's his name again? One more time.
Anthony.
Anthony. Let's go into Anthony's world for a second. How does he? What's his identity for you, seeing that, or how does he see you as a result of that situation?
Well, as a liar.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Give her a round of applause for that honesty. Really great.
Yeah.
You got that? So now you're seeing, now she's impacted by this. She's in the impact. What just got you about that? I mean, I appreciate you saying that, but what has just moved you being present to that, being aware of that?
Because I don't want to be that to him. I think there's other people in his life that do that, and I don't want to be one of those other people like that do that to him.
Yeah.
My word is important, and I pushed it aside and made it not important.
Yeah. It's
and
really,
made
really.
him not important. as a
Yeah,
result of it.
it's almost like because he's kind of seeing it and dealing with it, it's almost like he's like the victim of it to some extent. He may feel like that, I don't know. Sometimes kids aren't present to that. They're just like, oh, you know, okay.
I mean, he's really present, so it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really good. So I appreciate you going in and actually feeling the impact of that and getting that. That's not, I mean, that wasn't like, let's make her feel like that, right? That had nothing to do with that, right? Humans feel stuff, right? But the purpose of this is a very black and white guy. I mean, hopefully you're seeing, I'm just going through the physics of this for the most part. I'm not addressing psychology. I'm not addressing any of the emotions or whatever. There is an impact here. We can see it, right? We could talk about it. We can discuss it. All I care about right now is your awareness of this stuff. That's it. The rest of it, you know, we'll show up and we'll work through that piece if we need to.
Right.
But I know you're strong, and I know the only reason that you could probably say those things is because you're strong enough not just to handle it, but also to be responsible for it and do something about it. It's really great. Okay, so definitely there's an impact. You can see the impact in terms of how he sees you, and then also the impact on him of that. Any other impacts that you can see, whether it be long-term or short-term, that are really important around just the covering up of the laziness alone?
Well, the long term is I stay in a job that I know is making me sick, and I'm not doing something I really love to do, and I know I'm capable of doing. So I'm just like hanging out. So I'm like being majorly lazy.
Are you getting feedback? Okay. Please hold everything. This is a demo, so this isn't group discussion quite yet. Say all that again.
Okay, so I'm staying in a job, first of all, that isn't giving me anything.
Yes.
And is making me physically sick, because I know that's not where I want to be. And it's holding me back financially, because it's just, I make a paycheck. So this is the max. This is what I get is what I get. And I'm capable of so much more and deserve so much more than that. So
Okay.
yeah, long term, it's huge.
Yeah. And by the way, one other piece, and you didn't really say this outright, I think you're already connected the dots with it, but I want to explain it so we all kind of are on the same page with it at a minimum, which is that laziness perpetuates through your financial, your career, your creative, and your physical life, your health life as well, not because you're lazy and not because sometimes you act lazy or you do what laziness is. It's because you're covering it up.
Right.
And so that's why when I asked the question, what's the impact of covering up this laziness? Why everything you said was totally valid. Because this is like a two-step type of thing. It's not just like, well, I'm lazy, so that's the way life is. She could continue to be lazy and not have this impact in her life. Or at least have it be like tiny, like minimal. She's hit a critical mass of an impact, not because of the laziness, but because of that not being authentic about the laziness, not facing it, or whatever you want to call it, basically covering it up,
Right.
the way that we talk about it in here. Okay, really, really good. Is this okay for you?
No. Not at all.
Especially considering what you're committed to
Yeah.
with
it's
Anthony,
Not, yeah. It's not what I wanted.
with your career, with your finances, with your health. I mean, clearly you've got commitments there, or else you wouldn't have taken a lot of the actions that you've already shared with me. I read in your forum and all that.
Right.
You know, so this is obviously not okay. I didn't even have to really ask that, but I think that there's something powerful about just giving you a chance to just say that to your community. It's just like, this isn't okay, you know, because then again, like we talked about before, it's like the jig is up, you know, and you're not doing this in a vacuum, just alone, just thinking about it here. It's with other people.
Right.
So really good. So I think the impact and the cost, we're pretty much through that. And by the way, if you know, I think we all noticed, you know, Jamie got impact. You could see her in the impact for a while, but she didn't stay there. Like, you're not in that anymore, like reeling from what you just talked about.
Right.
So you recovered very quickly. That's from her strength, but also because that she has an awareness and a responsibility now that if she was still crying or if she was still lying, she would not have. There's a power and a clarity. Who can see that just in her face? If you don't, yeah, you can see that in her face if you didn't hear that in her voice. Do you get that? First of all, I just want to.
Yeah, I'm ready to let's get down to it.
It's really great.
Yeah.
And by the way, that action orientation was there before and had her doing certain things but not others. Now she's not only an action-oriented person, but also in a position in terms of awareness to really actually be able to commit to this powerfully and not have this other stuff stop her. Now, something else might stop you, but this is not going to stop you anymore, chances are,
Right.
except for maybe once in a blue moon, right? So really, really great. So there's one more thing, and this is kind of not in the impact step, but I'm gonna cover it because it kind of helps us segue from impact to commitment. When you are aware of the totality of the impact, when you really get that, and you're not in it like feeling it,
Right.
but you're like, you can step away from it and see the whole thing around that cover, at least around this cover up.
Right.
When you can see that and you get the whole awareness of it, you're totally aware of it, something will arise. Something will be there for you. And so the question I have for you is, what are you now aware of, having seen the totality of that impact and having been aware of that? What do you now see, or what now comes up for you? Or what are you left with now, seeing that whole thing?
Well, I think I've just played the victim, so I can either stay a victim or I can acknowledge it, and now it's out in the light, I've uncovered it, now let's move on and let's get it done.
Nice. So what are you aware of again?
That I've been a victim.
Yes.
I've chose to be a victim.
Yes.
And it was a choice. And now I'm going to make a different choice.
It's really beautiful. Give her a round of applause for that. That's really awesome. So this is just one of those cool magical things. I mean, we're just going through the mechanics and it just shows up. And again, if nothing was there, she'd either be still in the impact. And it's not about getting you out of the impact, but once you're aware of the impact, you can't be in it. You know, if you want to be aware of your house, you can't be inside of your house because you can only see one room in the house, unless it's a one-room house, I guess, right? But in order to really see the whole house, you got to step outside of it. You got to be beyond the house. You can't be in that. So if she's still feeling all those feelings and all that kind of stuff, it's like she's not really aware of it. She's kind of reacting to it, so to speak. You know. So it's really great. That just came up, and it's one of the beautiful awarenesses that happens when you see the whole entire impact, and you've gone through these first couple steps. So really great. Okay, final step. We're there, and this is the simple one. I mean, this is the fun part: commitment. So first things first. You know, I mean, we didn't really cover a specific action, but we don't need to. You know, I mean, you know the things that you need to do. So simple question: are you willing to recommit to doing that stuff?
Absolutely.
Really great.
Absolutely.
All right, great. And when are you going to get started?
Now.
Really great.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll hear tomorrow that you actually did something. I mean, not everything, obviously,
Yeah.
but you took some action towards this, yes?
Yeah.
All right, really great. So now we've got some accountability in place within your community. It's much more likely to do that, not to mention that you've got the power to do that from the awareness that was generated in those first 2 steps. So fantastic. Give her a round of applause for that commitment. Really fantastic. All right, really good. Okay, and final commitment. This is the commitment to transform the cause. And I am not really that concerned about your laziness, just knowing you. However, as I shared in step 2, my biggest concern from what I can see from the outside is just the cover-up of that.
Right.
So what could you commit to that would just rip that whole cover-up to shreds?
Well, I think what you talked about posting it. So I think if I put, am I covered up, or am I uncovered right now?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would just be enough of a trigger to remind me where am I at and what I'm doing.
Great. So that's going to do it for you, I think. That makes a lot of sense. So will you do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. All right, so we've got that for you now. This is a little bit of a bonus because we're moving really quickly through this, which is fantastic. And by the way, most accountability sessions are going to go, the actual accountability conversation probably be anywhere between 10 and 30 minutes at the most. Even a beginning, like the first time you've ever held somebody accountable, should be able to powerfully get through that within 30 to 40 minutes, probably max, if you're really facile with this, okay? And so Jamie's just kicking ass with this, and so we got time for a few bonuses. Everything I'm doing, by the way, though, is still within the realm of pure I'm not doing any other discipline of coaching right now. This is just accountability philosophy or accountability coaching at its core, okay? So these are all pieces. We're just going a little further with it. So I think you're going to be able to keep this on your radar screen for yourself. Mm-hmm. And there are individuals in your life that have been in the impact of this cover-up. Mm-hmm. Not the laziness. This is not about you not being lazy. Right? But there are individuals that are in the impact of this cover-up, and that not only do you care about, but also just individuals that you have you can be responsible for covering that up and really being authentic with them. So what do you need to share, and who do you need to share it with? And again, the whole point here is to transform the cover-up, really. Basically transforming the cause, okay? So who do you need to share with, and what do you need to share in order to really transform that with them in the conversation? Not just for yourself so you know it, but also literally in the conversation with them so you have not just additional accountability, but that powerfully you're responsible for the past, you've drawn a line in the sand, and that the past is going to be different from the future. Who do you need to talk to, and what do you need to say?
So I need to talk to my son, Anthony.
Yes.
And I need to apologize for talking about doing these actions and then not doing anything about it.
Yes.
So basically lying and just acknowledging to him, I don't like lying, and I've told him that, and I just lied, and so moving forward, I'm not going to do that.
Really great. Really awesome. Yeah, round of applause for that. All right, I'm going to give you a little coaching on that conversation, okay? Mm-hmm. Perfect what you just said, so definitely say all that, okay? The other thing that will have this cover-up end, at least for that relationship, if not for maybe every other one for that matter, would be actually uncovering and sharing being lazy with him, being lazy with Anthony, mm-hmm. okay? So you can use that in your own words. It's up to you how you say that. Mm-hmm. But because you use the word lazy in this conversation, I do want you to use that word. Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good for teenagers anyway. Anytime you say the word lazy, it's a hot button for him too. So.
Yeah, and it sounded like, as you described, it was a hot button in your relationship with him.
Right.
So when you take on, it's like, look, Anthony, I've been, not just I'm lazy at times, because you could just say that, but you can also say, look, I actually, whether I was conscious about it or not, I actually covered this up and hid it from myself, hid it from you, and really be like fully, it's not going to feel good necessarily to say that, because nobody wants to do that, right? But that's what the power of the accountability is. It's where you say something and it's like the last thing you would want to say, especially to somebody that you care about. But when you can be responsible for that at that level, that's really, it's the sign of true generosity, because you're taking full responsibility for the impact that that has had on him and you, and making sure that now that you've said that, you would never want to do that again, and it's out of the open so that that doesn't get brushed under the rug in the past, or I'm sorry, in the future. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, really great. So anybody else that you think you would need to have that conversation with, or have some conversation with, that's either been in the impact?
I can have that conversation with my husband, but I don't
Yes.
know that he'll understand on the same level that my son understands
Yes.
it. So, but definitely need to have a conversation with him about it as well.
Why?
Because again, I want to hold him accountable for what he says, and if I'm not being accountable and I'm not doing what I say I'm going to do, then that's not right for me to try to hold him accountable. So.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
And just so it's out there, so it's not just some secret that I'm covering up or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Very good
That's
point.
important in a marriage.
So you probably will have more power with him as you do these types of things. Okay. I don't doubt that. If that is the primary, it's still going to be motivated, right? But if it's the primary motivation for that conversation, in other words, I'm telling him this, even if you don't say this to him, right? I'm telling him this in order to make it so I can tell him to do stuff, then it will not be effective.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Because that's manipulating him.
Exactly. Give her a round of applause for that. You nailed it. Really good. Yeah, because at some point it becomes a game. It becomes some kind of weird chess game manipulations. Like, I'm going to say this to you so I can get this from, and all that kind of stuff. This is about, I mean, those relationships definitely are impacted by this, and there's no doubt that we're addressing the relationship. Yes, that is fair. And also, the part of the relationship we're addressing in this accountability conversation is 100% on your side. In other words, you're taking responsibility for everything you're responsible for. And if anything about them, it's acknowledging them for who they are for you, and then promising to them what it is that you will deliver for yourself or them or everybody in the future. So this is all about you, and not about what you're going to get from them or tell them to do or any of that. And by the way, not to say that at times you can't ask them for stuff or request something or even command to some extent. But you want to separate those so that the motivation is pure on that. And then you can be really effective with this. And you'll probably get more influence with them as well.
That makes sense.
But the real point about this is influencing yourself, and then being fully responsible for the impact that this had, and be fully accountable to those individuals that you can be accountable to in that light. And by the way, if you, not stop being lazy, but if you uncover this like that, and if this is on your radar screen now, and it stops getting in the way for you, and you take action on a lot of these things in that way, even when you're feeling lazy, even when you don't want to, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you're doing that consistently after you've had this conversation with them, right, and they see these changes happen with you, do you think that even if you didn't tell them to do X, Y, and Z and hold them accountable, or ask them for this and utilize that power in order to do that, do you think that these individuals in your life or somebody would not be inspired or appreciate you as an example of not just doing something good, but really transforming and growing and taking yourself to the next level? Do you think that's fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you will lead them and get more, not just more of what you want from them, but you'll actually give them more gifts for themselves, not just to break through laziness, break through anything that they might be covering up, right? Just by you having this conversation and then following through on the spirit of that conversation.
No, and to me, that's more important, that they get those tools and they're able to make those changes for themselves and uncover stuff for them.
Yeah, it's really great. So that, and by the way, again, this is kind of the bonus round, but when you're coaching somebody on this, or if you're just doing this for yourself, when you're having one of these accountability conversations on yourself with somebody you've impacted, because you haven't followed through or something like that, the conversation is bad news for you, good news for them. It's bad news for you, good news for them. That's the way it works. That's sharing. That's generous sharing. Okay, you don't want to say it, but it's good news that they heard it from you. And by the way, it doesn't mean that they like to hear it even. It just means that you care enough about the relationship, you're responsible enough for yourself, you respect them or yourself enough to be honest about it, such that you will not allow whatever you perpetrated in the past to continue like that. I remember I had a conversation like this with my father years ago, and it was probably one of the hardest conversations I've ever had with him. And my father has always, much of his life, not all of his life, but much of his life, he's struggled with finances, and he struggled to take care of his family. And so I, at times, would talk to my friends and the rest of the family about that in a disparaging way, kind of looking down my nose at him. And I appreciate a lot of his values, but I also saw how he performed in business as a warning. Not a really great example. So I wanted to divorce myself from that part of him. That really was a heartfelt man, but also, just hadn't gone to the next level in business. Just was never taking that on, right? And so I looked down at that and I said, he's a loser. He can't do this. He doesn't make this happen. He just chases after these gains, I just said all sorts of really crappy stuff about him behind his back. Not to his face, not honestly, not with a level of bravery like I'm really committed to transforming him or helping him or making a difference for him or just addressing it honestly, doing it in a less than upstanding way, let's put it that way. And there was this one moment when I was learning this technology and I realized, this is something that's probably constrained my relationship with him and the way I look at him and the way I look at myself. And the fact that, I've got no courage if I'm not willing to, just get over this as well. And so I had to make that call to him, and I had to tell him in so many words. I mean, here was the assignment, right? The assignment was to tell my father that I thought of him as a loser in so many words. And we're talking about a significance-driven man, right? It's not going to exactly help the relationship to say that. So that is not generous sharing in the way that would have been couched, right? It's like, it's not good news for you, bad news for me if I'm like, hey, I just want to let you know I thought you were a loser for a while. Not very cool. So I had to find a way. I still need to be honest, right? This was about, I needed to say what I needed to say. I couldn't change the words. I couldn't take that word away. I had already said it. I had already thought it a lot. And I had to be responsible for it. I'm not very responsible for it if I cover that up with more, icing on the shit pie, basically, right? So I had to deal with that, but I could take responsibility for it and not blame myself, but be fully responsible for being the one who was at the source of that. And it was nothing about him. And so what I finally said to him was, this is one of the hardest things that I've ever had to think about saying, and I feel so bad about it. And at the same time, it's like I have to be honest, and it's something that I'm ashamed of, and that I was responsible for and am responsible for, which is that for years and years I have made you out to be and treated you like you are, and even said at times like you're a loser. And I'm so sorry for saying that. And you're not a loser. And I am 100% responsible for and at the source of making you into that in my mind, because I know that's not who you are. And so maybe what still wasn't a real happy thing for him to say, but actually when I said that, he laughed and he's like, well, I wouldn't have been surprised. That might have been a thought that would have crossed your minds at times. And in that moment when it's like I was able to get through that conversation and hold myself accountable for what I perpetrated behind his back, I mean, this is a level of peace and connection with my father that I had never had before. And still to this day, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. And still to this day, our relationship is so much beyond. I mean, I think for him it was always a really good relationship, But for me, it has been a deeper experience and ability to fully express my love for my father. Because that was one way that was standing in the way of me loving him fully, not because I always thought he was a loser, but because I had to hide that, and because I couldn't say that, it created a limitation on how much of myself I could offer to him. So you're not fully, until you share these things fully, the things that are really important to you especially, whether they like hearing them or not, obviously, like I said, you could be generous with it, good news for them, bad news for you. Until you share these parts of yourself, number one, you won't be fully alive because you won't express that to people that are important to you. But secondly, they won't fully know who you are. And that's part of this too, is not just taking responsibility and being accountable, handling the mechanics of this. Part of this is just being fully with them, good, bad, and indifferent, all the different aspects of you. And that alone will give you a deeper connection with them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's really great. So awesome work. I think you're ready to roll.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great job.